welcome back, or welcome for the first time. Either way, you made it, and that matters, because tonight we are not just drifting off. We are stepping into something stranger, something sharper, something stitched together with bells, wit, bruised knees, and too much wine. We are stepping into your life as a medieval joker. But before we tumble headfirst into the absurd, just a moment to ask, softly, kindly, and without pressure, if you really like what I do, if this space has become a quiet part of your night, please consider becoming a member of the channel by subscribing. I make special videos for my royal members every week. It helps keep the fire burning, keeps the words flowing, and most of all, it tells me you're out there, listening, breathing, coming back. Don't forget to comment what are you doing right now and what time it is for you. Now, on with the story. The first thing you need to know is this. You are not normal. Not in this world. You were never meant to be. You were born at the wrong hour, with the wrong laugh, and the right kind of chaos in your blood. You learned early that the world does not reward stillness in people like you. It rewards movement, words, tricks, and you learned how to survive with both. You are a joker, or a fool, if you like the older term. Not the fool who does not know better. The fool who knows too much and hides it behind a grin. You live in a castle, not yours, never yours, but you move through it like you own it. From the kitchen to the stables to the high stone hall where the king himself slumps in a chair that cost more than your entire family line, and you stand before him, bells on your ankles, motley on your back, and you do what no one else can. You make him laugh. And sometimes you make him think. It is a dangerous job. Make no mistake. One wrong joke, and you're in the stocks. One wrong truth, and you're in the river. But if you do it right, if you dance just close enough to the fire without falling in, you become untouchable. That is your power. You eat better than the guards. You know more secrets than the scribes. You hear the whispers of the court and turn them into punchlines. You see the world as it is and offer it back in riddles. You wake in a small chamber beneath the kitchen stairs. Your bed is straw, but your dreams are velvet. You wear a cap with two horns stitched in, not devil horns. Not quite. Just enough to remind people you are not to be trusted, and yet they trust you more than the priests. Because when you laugh, they feel safe. And when you stop laughing, they pay attention. Your tools are simple. A lute with two strings left. A dagger that no one knows you carry. A pouch of chalk for drawing faces on the wall. A mirror that does not lie. You carry all of them like weapons. Because in this life, your words are armor and your silence, sharper than any sword. Today, the court is restless. A visiting lord has arrived. He smells like old coin and new arrogance. You have already crafted 3 jokes about his hat, 2 about his horse, and 1 about the sound he made climbing off it. You will wait until just the right moment to use them, because timing is everything. And you are a master of time. So eat your bread, tie your bells, stretch your smile. The curtain is about to rise. And they are all watching. The court smells like sweat and incense, a mix of spilled wine, polished boots, and candles that have burned too long. The king is already seated, slouched sideways in his heavy chair, bored before the feast has even started. His eyes skim the room like a man looking for something to hate. You stand just to the left of him, where the light catches your bells but not your face. That is how you like it. Always half seen. Always on the edge of notice. The new lord struts in. He has too many rings, and not enough neck. His tunic is stitched with silver thread, and his eyebrows are drawn too high, like they are trying to escape his face altogether. You smile, not with your mouth, with your posture, with the way your knee turns slightly, with the way your head tilts, like the man is already a punchline. You speak before anyone else can. You say something about how even his horse looked embarrassed to carry him. The court laughs. Not too loud. Just enough. The king grins sideways. He does not laugh unless it hurts someone. You are safe. For now. Your job tonight is not just to amuse. It is to distract. There are too many tensions in the room. A new tax passed. A cousin executed. Someone whispered that the queen no longer sleeps alone. You feel it all in the way people chew, in the way they lift their goblets. Too slow, too cautious. You know tension like a blind man knows touch, and you know how to cut through it. So you do. You sing, badly, on purpose. A song about a goose who became a bishop and refused to give up his feathers. People laugh harder. The goose is clearly the archbishop. He hears the joke and turns red, but he does not speak, because if he does, you will have a second verse. You are not cruel. You are accurate. That is what makes you dangerous. The serving girls pass you scraps, meat from the king's platter, bread with actual grain in it. They trust you more than the knights. You learn things in the kitchens, in the corners, in the silences no one else notices. You know which guards drink too much, which ladies sleep too little. You hold all of it in your mouth like seeds. And when the time is right, you plant them, not to grow chaos, to grow truth, dressed in a joke, wrapped in a grin. That is the secret of being a joker. You are not there to amuse. You are there to reveal. And tonight, everyone has something to hide. The trumpets call for the next course and the knights rise stiffly from their benches, gleaming armor clinking like distant thunder. You step forward, careful to let your motley brush the floor, bells chiming a low warning. A platter of spiced venison is carried in by 2 footmen who glare at you as if you might steal their shadows. You bow deeply and mime a conversation between the venison and the tablecloth, an epic debate on which one is more slippery. The hall erupts in laughter, relieving the tension as though you have cracked open a door to let the noise escape. But you never linger on a joke too long. You move like a breeze, present enough to be felt but gone before anyone can grasp you. You scan the faces in the hall. The steward watches you with narrowed eyes, guessing the cost of your loyalty. The queen sips her wine and taps her fingers, amused even as she hides it. The prince yawns and rubs his elbow on the table, bored out of his mind. You catch his gaze and offer him a wry shrug, mock sympathy for living under so much expectation. He grins, too reluctant to break courtly decorum. You notice the cook in the corner wiping sweat from her brow. She has risked too much to serve this feast. You tip an imaginary hat to her and mime her heroic battle with the cauldron, complete with steam rising like dragon breath. Her smile breaks across her face, vulnerable and relieved. In that moment, you know you have done more than amuse. You have brought recognition to someone overlooked. As the next horn sounds the arrival of dessert, candied fruits from distant lands, you realize the scope of your role. You are not merely a jester. You are a mirror held up to the court. You show them what they fear to admit and what they need to remember. A subtle motion of your hand, a tilt of your head, a careful word placed just so, all become part of a dance older than nobility. The hall is lighter now. Voices carry. The new lord slouches less. The old duke cracks a crooked smile. Even the dark corners seem less intimidating. That is your gift and your burden. To walk the edge of laughter and truth. To balance their weight on a single quip. Tonight you survive another act. Later you will slip away to the servants' stairwell, shed your motley and sit in silence until dawn. But for now you remain the spark in their gloom, the thread weaving through their secrets, the echo of courage wrapped in a fool's cap. After the last toast and the last awkward song from a bored minstrel who strums like he is being paid by the note, you slip out through the side door, bells muffled beneath your coat. The hallway beyond is cold stone, dark in a way the hall never is. But you prefer it. This is where the truth lives. In the cracks, in the cold, in the things no one says aloud. Your chamber is no more than a cell, tucked near the wine casks. You hang your cap on a hook shaped like a dragon with its jaw broken. You sit, you breathe, and you let the quiet press in, because being a joker is not just performance, it is endurance. And you are tired in a way that laughter can no longer mask. You pull out the book. Not one of parchment and ink, a book made of wood shavings, charcoal, and pressed petals. One page for each day you kept your head, one line per truth you managed to say without punishment. You add another line now, sharp and dark. It curves into a question, one only you will ever read. Was it worth it today? You do not answer. You never do. There are voices in the corridor. A maid whispering to a guard, the clink of a wine flask being passed too close to a torch. You listen, always listening. That is what keeps you useful. That is what makes you dangerous. You know who loves who owes coin, who wants the throne but not the crown. You know it all, and you carry it with the grace of a juggler, never letting a single piece fall too hard. Your boots are still damp from pacing the flagstones, your hands stained from ink and soot, but your mind is clear. You remember every face in the hall, every shift in posture, every moment someone laughed too loud or not at all. You reach for the pouch, hidden behind the stone, inside tokens, not gold, not silver, but proof, a broken ring, a lock of hair, a list of names. These are your savings, your leverage, your retirement plan. If the king ever decides your jokes bite too close, you do not smile now. You do not need to. The candle flickers, the rats rustle, and you let the night do what it does best. Cover the truth in shadows. Until morning, when you will put the cap back on, ring the bells once, and grin like none of this matters. Morning begins not with sunlight, but with shouting, the kind that bounces down stone corridors and lands like cold water on your spine. Someone is angry, someone important. That means your day has started. You roll from your pallet, wash your face with water so cold it stings, and grab the cap. The bells do not jingle today. You tied them with linen. A quiet jester is more dangerous than a loud one, and today you need to listen before you speak. You climb the servant stairs 2 at a time, moving through the kitchen like a ghost. The cooks are already elbow-deep in flour and complaints. You swipe a crust of bread and catch a wink from the girl who sharpens knives faster than most men draw them. She mouths the word fight and points to the hall. That is all you need. You slip into the back of the room, unnoticed at first. The king is on his feet, red-faced and pacing. The duke stands firm, arms crossed. Words are flying about coin, about land, about what was promised and never delivered. The queen watches from her seat like a woman counting breaths instead of threats. The others are frozen. No one dares speak. And then they see you. You walk in slowly, exaggerating your steps, one hand on your chest like the sheer tension in the room has given you a fainting spell. The moment cracks. A few nervous chuckles break out. The king narrows his eyes, but he does not stop you. He never does. You bow low, not respectful, performative, like a man greeting a stage, not a throne. You clear your throat and deliver a line about how the duke must be trying a new diet, cutting out honor altogether. A few more laughs. Even the queen smirks. The duke glares. Perfect. You follow with a tale about 2 farmers arguing over whose pig can read Latin. By the end of it, the tension has peeled back just enough for the king to sit again. This is your work. Not juggling, not singing, not dancing. Control. You are the oil on the wheels of a broken cart, the crack in the dam that lets the pressure escape. You finish with a bow so deep your cap brushes the floor. The king waves you off like a man brushing away smoke, but his anger is cooled. The court exhales. The fight is postponed. As you exit, someone tosses a coin at your feet. You do not pick it up. You do not dance for copper. You dance for survival. You step back into the corridor, the door shutting behind you like a sigh too tired to slam. Your shoulders drop. You roll your neck. That kind of performance costs more than coin. It drains something quieter, something no one claps for, but you know it was worth it. The king did not explode. The duke did not storm off. That is a win. In this castle, that is the kind of peace people pray for. You walk past a maid carrying a tray of spiced milk. She nods. A subtle thank you. No one speaks it aloud, but they all know the jester saved the room today. You climb the northern tower steps, out of view. There is a place up top where no one follows you. A little nook behind the bell wall where the wind always finds you first. You sit there now, legs crossed, cap off, staring out over the frozen trees. It is your only high ground. The rest of your life is spent in corners, under tables, behind laughter. From here, you can see the village, thin smoke rising from low roofs. A few animals moving slow, people already working. You used to live down there before someone saw your sharp tongue and sharper eyes and decided you would serve better among nobility than among mud. They were half right. You learned quickly that no one up here likes to be watched, but everyone needs to be seen. That is your secret power. You know who limps when no one looks. You know whose voice cracks when they lie. You know how to smile like a shield and laugh like a blade. You pull out the note you wrote last night, folded in a bit of waxed linen, hidden in your sleeve, just a few lines, a joke, about the treasurer and the missing coin. You are not going to say it. Not yet, but you keep it ready, because sometimes survival is not telling the joke, it is knowing when you could. You stay there until your fingers go numb, then you slip back down past the kitchens, through the hall where the guards laugh too loudly. One of them tries to grab your arm. You twist free before he even grips tight. Smile too wide. Walk faster. The king can order you to die. The guards can only wish you would. You reach your room. The motley goes back on. The bells stay muffled. You lean in, close to your reflection in the basin water, and practice a grin. Not joy. Not mockery. Balance. You are called before the queen, just before dusk. A page with trembling hands finds you by the stables, where you were trying to teach a chicken how to bow. It is not working. The chicken has no sense of dignity. You dust off your coat, straighten your motley, and follow the boy through stone halls that smell like wax and old arguments. The air changes near her chambers. Cooler, slower. People speak in softer tones, as if the walls themselves are listening. You enter with your cap in hand. She waves the page away without looking. You stand at the threshold. Do not speak yet. You wait. That is part of the game. She pours her own wine, drinks once, sets the cup down like she might shatter it next. She tells you a noble insulted her under breath during the feast. She heard it. No one else did. She does not name him. She does not have to. You already know. Then she says, make him regret it. Not with poison, not with steel, with a joke. You nod once. No smile. She dismisses you. This is how power moves in the court. Sideways. Through you. You find the noble in question in the West Wing gallery, admiring a painting of a lion that looks more like a sleepy dog. He is drunk, leaning too far over the railing, one hand on a goblet, the other scratching at something that should not be scratched in public. You approach with the slow confidence of someone who has already decided the outcome. You open with a compliment so dry, it hurts your own tongue. Then a story about a knight who rode into battle wearing his squire's boots and cried when they pinched. Everyone knows it is him. He knows it is him. But the others laugh before they realize why. That is the art. You twist the blade slowly. Another line. Another truth, dressed in a mask. He goes red, laughs, badly. But he does not speak, because now everyone is watching. And no one defends a noble mocked in perfect rhythm. They laugh because it is safe. They laugh because you said what they could not. The queen hears of it before the hour turns. She sends no message, just a bottle of the same wine she was drinking earlier. You open it alone, sip once. It tastes like victory. Sharp, expensive, forgettable. Like everything in this place. The thing no one tells you about power is how lonely it is. Not just for kings and queens and dukes who sleep behind locked doors. For you too, the jester, the fool, the one who knows everyone's secrets but never hears their prayers. You walk through the castle after the wine is poured, after the guards have eaten, after the fire has turned from flame to ember, and you are alone, not by accident, by design. You pass by the chapel, empty now, the smell of wax and stone. You do not go in. You never do. You once made a joke about the priest's sermons being shorter than his temper and got locked in a cellar for 3 days. You still have the scar where the rat bit your ankle. You prefer your own religion now. Observation, timing, survival. You reach the courtyard. Snow has started to fall, thin at first, quiet. The kind that looks like dust but bites like glass when it finds your skin. You tilt your head back and let it touch your face. This is the closest thing you get to prayer. A soft sky, a cold truth. You return inside through the scullery door. The kitchen is empty, but the fire is still warm, and there's half a loaf left on the cutting block. You tear a piece, dip it in broth, left on the coals, and eat in silence. This is your feast. You remember a time when your laughter came easy, when you were a child slipping through markets, mocking vendors for their bruised fruit and crooked scales. People laughed then too, but the stakes were lower. You could disappear into the alley. Now, if you vanish, someone will notice and they will fill your silence with worse. You sleep in the same clothes. The bells muffled, the dagger under the blanket, pressed against your hip. It is not for killing, not unless it must be. You wake to footsteps. Heavy, not guards, not servants. Someone important. You sit up before they knock. A page, pale, young, staring like he's seen a ghost wearing your smile. The queen wants you. Now, you do not ask why the queen wants you. You never ask. Questions are the privilege of people who do not rely on timing for survival. So you follow, through hallways still damp with night, past windows crusted with frost, past portraits of people who never laughed and never meant to. The page says nothing. He walks too fast. That tells you enough. The queen is alone in the solar. No ladies, no guards, just her and a candle so low its flame dances like it's trying to leave. She is standing. That is never good. She is holding a piece of parchment. Worse, she does not offer a seat. Worst. You bow, not deeply, just enough to acknowledge that you know your role and you are willing to perform it. She says nothing for a while. Then, she reads the note. Not to you, to the room, to the silence. It is a short verse, clever, biting, not yours. But it sounds like it could have been. That is the danger of being a jester. Eventually everyone starts hearing your voice in words you never said. The verse is about her brother, about the war, about the coin lost and the men sent to die for a cause no one remembers. It is brutal and true. She asks if it was you. You say no. You do not explain. She watches your face the way a hawk watches something smaller than its hunger. Then she nods once. Slow, not belief, not disbelief, just calculation. She says it must not be traced to you, which means she believes you said it, which means she believes it was too good not to come from your mouth, which means your reputation has started to feed itself, even when you are not trying. That is power and danger. She gives you the note, tells you to burn it, not in the hearth, in the courtyard, publicly, where people will see you, where people will assume you wrote it and are now being punished. You nod again. Because this, too, is part of the mask. You leave with the note in your hand and 20 eyes on your back. By the time you reach the courtyard, the sun has not yet risen. You light the torch. You hold the page. You burn it. But you memorize every word before it turns to ash. Because someone else wrote what you could not. And that means you are not alone. The fire is still smoldering when the steward steps outside, arms folded, breath clouding in front of him like a man trying to warm himself with authority. He does not speak at first, just watches the ashes like they might rise again and spell out something damning. You wait, still, no expression. The silence stretches so thin you can almost hear the parchment curling in memory. Then he asks if you understand what message you just sent. You nod once. It is the only answer worth giving. He says nothing else, just turns and leaves, the crunch of his boots trailing off across the stones. You brush the last flecks of soot from your sleeve and return inside. By now the castle is waking, the smell of baking bread, the clatter of buckets, the quiet hum of another day beginning too soon. You pass a knight who does not meet your eye. You pass a maid who does. She mouths a single word. Why? You do not answer. You never do. The jester is not supposed to explain the joke. In your chamber you sit cross-legged on the stone floor, tracing the cracks in the wall with your eyes. You replay the queen's voice, the note, the way she held it like it burned even before the fire touched it. Someone in this castle is braver than you, or more foolish. Either way, they wrote what needed to be said, and now everyone believes it came from your mouth. That means more eyes will watch you, more ears will listen, every joke will carry new weight, every silence will become suspicious. That is the cost of reputation. It grows teeth. You sharpen your knife, not because you expect violence, because it gives your hands something to do, something real. You will not be a weapon, but you will never be harmless again. That afternoon, the court gathers for a game, a tournament of words and wit, held to amuse visiting nobles. You are not asked to participate. You are asked to judge. That is new. You sit on a raised chair with a garland placed crooked on your head, your boots muddy from the courtyard, your smile easy but unreadable. One by one, the poets step forward, offering riddles, rhymes, wordplay so fragile it shatters under its own cleverness. You listen to them all. When they finish, you stand, stretch, and recite a single joke about a goat who inherited a title and still made better decisions than half the lords present. The crowd erupts. Even the poets laugh, too eager to be seen joining in. You sit again, say nothing more. The winner is clear. You never had to name them. When the queen walks past later, she does not stop, but her hand brushes your shoulder. Light, just once. You do not turn. You just close your eyes. By evening, the halls have settled into their usual hum. Nobles tucked behind tapestries, servants whispering in corners, guards half asleep with one hand on the hilt. You move through it all like a breeze through a field, disturbing nothing, knowing everything. The castle is quieter now that they think you are dangerous. They do not say it aloud, but you feel it, the space that opens around you, the glances that linger a moment longer. There is power in being misunderstood. You have always known that. You built your life on it. The line between fool and truth speaker is razor thin, and tonight you walk it without stumbling. In the north wing, the steward is meeting with the royal treasurer. They speak in low voices about coin shortages, missing shipments, a noble family who has stopped paying what they owe. You lean against the wall just out of sight, pretending to hum a tavern song about a miller's wife and a stolen goose. They think you are not listening. They always think that. And when they leave, you stay just long enough to catch the last sentence. Something about a plan. Something about needing the queen to look the other way. Later, you sit in the scriptorium, where scribes copy holy texts by candlelight. You are not supposed to be there, but no one stops you anymore. You browse a pile of discarded scraps, Old notes, broken seals, ink that bled too fast across the parchment. One name stands out. You pocket it without hesitation. It will matter soon. You do not know how, but it will. Back in your chamber, you empty your pouch onto the floor. Bits of wax, fragments of string, the piece of cloth you wrapped the burned letter in before letting it fall. You keep everything. Nothing is wasted. You tuck the name you found into your boot. It will be safe there. You do not sleep yet. You sit by the wall and listen to the wind push against the shutters. You think of the poet who lost the game earlier, the look on his face. He will try again. He will be sharper next time. People always sharpen themselves against you. You wonder how many of them understand that you are not fighting. You are just reflecting. There is a knock at your door. 3 soft taps. Then a pause. You know who it is. You open it. And the queen steps inside. Alone. She does not speak at first. She never does. She moves like someone used to having her weight considered. Not just her presence, her silence, her choices, her absence. That too is part of her rule. You do not bow. You already did that today. This moment does not belong to the throne. It belongs to something older than protocol. She sits on the low stool by the fire, folds her hands in her lap, and watches the flames like they might speak before she does. You sit across from her, legs crossed, shoulders loose, but alert. You do not joke. Not here. Not yet. She finally speaks. The voice is softer than usual, without the iron it wears in daylight. She tells you someone is moving against her, not with blades, with rumors, notes, clever poems tucked into corners, spoken aloud by people who laugh too quickly after. It is spreading, and she needs someone who can move without drawing blood, someone who can echo what must be said and bury what must not. She does not say the word assassin. She does not have to. In this world, information is its own blade. She wants you to handle it. You ask one question, not who. You already know the names. You ask, how loud do you want it to be? She does not smile, but something flickers behind her eyes, a warmth that knows it is dangerous to be seen. She stands. She says nothing else. She leaves. And you are alone again. But the room still feels like her. You lie back on the straw, stare at the stone ceiling, and count backwards from 50. This is how you train your nerves when the act is about to begin. You are not afraid. Not anymore. You are too far into the role for fear. Now you only feel movement. The way the world shifts around your words. You remember every line from the poem she read. You replay it in your mind, not for meaning but for rhythm. The rhythm is everything. People will believe anything if it rhymes. You sit up. Pull out the list you started last winter. It is short. 3 names. Now it will be longer. Not because you want it to be. Because this is what a jester does when the crown whispers truth in the dark and dares you to laugh about it later. You do not act right away. That is how fools get caught. Moving too quickly, chasing answers that have not fully bloomed. You spend the next day exactly as they expect you to, loitering in the great hall, balancing a spoon on your nose, making the young prince laugh so hard he nearly drops his goblet. It is a ridiculous bit. You sell it like it is the cleverest thing you have ever done. The king does not laugh. He rarely does anymore. But he watches. You can feel it. That is fine. Let him. Later, you make your way to the aviary, where the falconer keeps his birds in secrets. You compliment his bird's posture. He laughs, calls you an idiot, then gives you what you came for, a folded note tucked under a seed bag, written in the same ink that stained the parchment burned in the courtyard. You thank him with a riddle about a chicken who became a prophet and predicted her own soup. He does not get the joke. That is fine. It is not for him. Back in your chamber, you lock the door. Not because you need privacy, because you need stillness. You unroll the note, no names, just a message. The ones closest to the fire are usually the ones feeding it. You read it 3 times, then commit it to memory. You burn it without hesitation. You stare into the small flame longer than you should. You return to the hall in time for supper. You perform again, this time with shadows cast on the wall, making nobles into animals, animals into kings, kings into goats. They laugh. They always laugh when it sounds like someone else is being mocked. They never realize when the blade is for them, until it is too late. You pass by the steward's table and leave a single plum on his plate. It means nothing. It means everything. He will not sleep tonight. He will wonder if you know. You do. Later, as the castle falls into sleep, you slip through the kitchen, through the cellar, and into the unused corridor behind the chapel. You carve one line into the wall with your dagger. Do not trust those who smile without lines. Tomorrow, someone will find it, and begin to wonder who you meant. At dawn, you are already awake, sitting on the roof tiles above the west wing, watching the first thin smoke rise from the village below. The rooftops glitter with frost, and the river looks like it is holding its breath. You chew a strip of dried apple from the cook's larder and think through the day ahead. You have 3 names now, 1 confirmed, 1 suspected, 1 whispered. Each one has power. Each one smiles like a man who has never had to pay for it. You will change that, but not with poison, not with blades. You will do what you were made to do. You will speak, loud enough for the right people, quiet enough that no one can blame you outright. You slip back inside, just as the bells toll for morning prayers. You skip chapel. Everyone expects that. You instead walk the servant halls, trading jokes for rumors. You learn the steward has ordered a second set of books to be copied, that the queen's brother has sent a rider without a seal, that the king's physician has changed the wine for something stronger. None of this is useful yet, but it is the ground beneath the stage. You are laying planks with every word, every glance, every nod that lingers half a second longer than it should. At midday you stand before the nobles and tell a story. It is an old one, about a king with a crooked spine and a jester, who built him a throne that forced him to sit straight. The punchline is sharp, the reaction sharper. You lock eyes with 3 men. One of them flinches. The wrong one. That tells you something. After, in the hallway, the youngest of the 3 stops you, tries to laugh it off. You smile with your eyes but not your mouth. He asks if the story was about the king. You say no, of course not. You were speaking in metaphor. Then you tilt your head and say, unless it felt true, in which case maybe it was. He leaves, pale. At dusk, you sit with the cook by the back fire and share wine that tastes like iron and burnt cherries. She does not ask you why you are quiet. She knows the rhythm of your silences better than most. She tells you that someone has been asking after you, a messenger from the north wing. No name given, no message left. That is enough. You walk back to your chamber slower than usual. You scratch a symbol into the underside of your stool. You place a lockpick under your mattress. You count your breath until it matches the sound of the wind outside. They think the fool is a tool, but they have forgotten what happens when the mask learns how to see. You spend the morning walking the gardens. It is too cold for roses now. Only the bones of hedges remain, knotted and bare, but you walk them anyway. Because the gardener's apprentice has loose lips and clumsy hands, and this morning both have brought you something useful. A parchment, no seal, folded twice and tucked beneath a cobblestone near the sundial. You wait until no one watches before slipping it into your sleeve. You do not read it yet. You wait. That is the trick. You always wait until the world is too loud for spies to hear your thoughts land on paper. For now you pocket it beside the shard of mirror you carry like a second set of eyes. At supper you sit on the floor, cross-legged like a child, and entertain the youngest nobles with a story about a dog who became a duke. They howl. The king watches. You do not look at him. You never offer your sharpest lines unless someone earns them. And tonight is not his night. Tonight you are keeping your teeth covered in velvet. Tonight is about misdirection. While you hold their laughter, the real message is moving. 3 couriers sent out before sundown, all carrying versions of the same story, each one slightly bent. You are not trying to spread the truth. You are trying to see who reacts first. After the feast, you read the parchment in the stillness of the corridor near the old chapel gate. It is a list, short, 5 names, 1 scratched out, 2 you know too well. 1 surprises you. The last makes you stop breathing for a full count of 10. You fold it again, once, twice, and feed it into the crack behind the altar stone. Let someone else find it years from now and wonder what kind of war was being fought in silence. Back in your chamber, you rearrange the bells on your motley, just slightly. You add a second loop of linen under the left one so it muffles harder when you turn. It seems like nothing, but everything in your life has been earned by slight shifts. The way a grin changes a sentence. The way a pause turns a joke into prophecy. The way someone leans forward just before you say the thing they wish was not true. You sharpen your quill, dip it once. Write a single sentence on the back of a wine label. Sometimes the crown does not fall. Sometimes it cracks from the inside. You place the bottle back on the table by your bed. Someone will read it tomorrow. The bells ring early. Not for prayer, not for meal. A different tone, sharper, faster. It is the sound of trouble dressed in ceremony. You rise without hurrying. That would look like guilt. You dress like it is just another day. Motley on. Bells checked. Dagger hidden in the boot just in case. You step into the hallway and immediately sense the change. Cards stand stiff at every turn. Not relaxed. Not idle, alert. You pass 2 of them exchanging glances. One tapping the hilt of his blade like it owes him a confession. You smile without your eyes. The smile that means nothing, the one that keeps you alive. You reach the great hall and find half the court already gathered. The king sits higher than usual, both hands on his knees like he is bracing for a storm. The queen is not beside him. That tells you more than any whisper could. You scan the room once. The steward looks too calm. The bishop too nervous. Someone has moved a piece and no one is sure yet where it will fall. You step forward, bow with all the mockery required, and ask if the king would like a tale before the day collapses into history. He waves you on, too distracted to refuse. You begin a story about a rabbit who tried to build a dam to stop the river from flowing. Halfway through, it becomes clear the river is a war and the rabbit is someone in the room. People laugh anyway. Some too loud, some too late. When you finish, you nod once and step back. The king does not look at you. He looks through you. That is more dangerous than a glare. After court, you walk the long hall toward the solar. You are intercepted before you get there. A boy no older than 13, dressed in robes too rich for his age, hands you a folded slip of cloth. Inside, a key, small, iron, old. You recognize the etching. It opens a chamber in the oldest part of the castle, the one with no windows and too much dust. You ask who gave it to him. He shrugs, says it was left in his bed with a coin and your name. You wait until night to go. You move quiet, soft steps. No bells tonight, just your breath and the sound of doors remembering how to groan. You unlock the chamber. It is empty, except for a single parchment on the floor. 3 words. She knows everything. You leave it untouched. You lock the door again. You walk slower now, not from fear, from knowing the game is no longer yours alone. You do not sleep that night. You sit by the window watching the moon rise slow behind the battlements, silver and deliberate like it is watching too. You replay the words on the parchment again and again. She knows everything. Not a threat, not a plea, just a truth. Left alone in a room no one visits unless they want to disappear. You think of the queen, her eyes, the way she touches nothing unless it matters. You wonder how long she has known, not just about you, about everything. How long has she been waiting for someone else to step far enough into the fire so she does not have to? At dawn, you stand in the courtyard and juggle 3 stones while the servants scurry past. They pretend not to notice, but they watch from the corners of their eyes. They always do. The stones are not for show. They are practice, balance, control. You let one fall on purpose and smile at the sound it makes. Like a bone-tapping tile, the kind of sound that stays with people longer than it should. You spend the day listening, not just to words, to pauses. You follow the bishop down the corridor and count how many times he glances over his shoulder. 4. That is a man who is either guilty or about to be made guilty. You sit by the scribe's corner and hear talk of a second letter, never delivered, intercepted before it crossed the castle gate. They do not say what it said. They do not have to. You already feel the shape of it. In the afternoon, you pass the young prince in the gardens. He is alone, poking the dirt with a stick like he is trying to grow his own kingdom. You kneel beside him and whisper a story about a crown too heavy for a child to wear. He laughs. Not because it is funny, but because he does not understand the weight yet. That is fine. He will. Later, you slip a folded message beneath the queen's door. It contains no words, just a pressed violet from the chapel garden. A flower that only blooms where secrets rot. You leave it there, silent, then walk away. That night, the halls are quieter than usual, too quiet. No footsteps, no gossip. Even the wind outside feels careful. You lock your door for the first time in weeks. You place your bells on the stool beside your bed. You do not sharpen your dagger. You count your breaths again, 50 down to 1, because something is coming. And whatever it is, you are ready. The castle wakes slowly, too slowly. A hush spreads like fog, curling through hallways and clinging to corners. You step into the corridor and feel it instantly. People speak in gestures today. Less sound, more glance. You hear the clatter of armor without laughter. That means patrols, not pageantry. You pass the steward and he does not look up from his scroll. That means the balance is shifting again. Something has broken loose behind the scenes and no one wants to be the one caught standing still. By midday, it becomes clear. The bishop is gone, not exiled, not executed, just gone. His chambers emptied, his servants reassigned, not a word spoken, as if he never existed. You stand in the chapel doorway staring at the empty seat where he used to mutter half-truths with full confidence. There is wax on the floor. A single melted candle that no one bothered to clean. You bend, press 2 fingers into the wax, and touch it to your neck like it is ash. A mark for memory, not mourning. You leave a note on the steward's desk. Not a threat, just a line. Silence is the most expensive thing we trade. You do not sign it. He will know that is the point. Not to accuse, to remind. That evening, the queen calls for music, and usual. Especially today, she wants songs. Laughter. She wants a performance. Which means something must be buried under rhythm and wine. You oblige. Of course you do. You juggle candlesticks. Balance a tray on your foot. Tell a story about a rat who lived in the king's chamber and developed a taste for velvet. Everyone laughs. Even the king. Especially the king. You watch him laugh too long, too loud. His wine is red. His teeth are stained. He is not drinking for joy. He is drinking for forgetting. Later, after the crowd thins, she approaches. No words. Just a folded parchment pressed into your palm. You wait until she leaves to open it. It is not a command. It is not a threat. It is a single name. And it is yours. You stare at the parchment longer than you should. Your name, inked in the same careful hand that signs treaties. Death orders, love letters never delivered. There is no instruction, no accusation, just the name, floating in that empty space like a ghost that has finally decided to speak. You fold it twice, slower than usual, tuck it into your sleeve. You do not burn this one. Not yet. Some ghosts deserve to linger. You walk out of the hall without a bow. No one stops you. Maybe they do not see you. Maybe they do and decide it is safer to pretend they do not. In your chamber, you place the parchment under the leg of the stool. Let it weigh. Let it press. You sit on the floor with your back to the door and run through the past 5 days in your head like steps in a dance. You did not mean to learn the letters, the silence, the bishop's absence, the queen's touch, the king's laughter. And now this your name handed back to you like a mirror you forgot you were holding. You sleep in pieces, dreamless. Eyes open every hour. At one point, you hear a knock, but it never repeats. You do not answer. You do not move. At dawn, you rise and dress like it is a festival day. Richer fabric, brighter bells, a splash of red in your sash no one has seen before. You want to be seen. You want them to wonder why. Visibility is its own armor. You walk the long corridor past the royal gallery. You pause at the tapestry of the founding king's sword in one hand, falcon on the other. You whisper a joke under your breath about how birds of prey have better manners. You move on. At meal, you serve yourself before the nobles. That breaks custom. You pretend not to notice. The king does not scold you. The queen does not glance up. That is worse. It means they are watching without looking. You stand beside the musicians and pluck the wrong strings on purpose. The tune sours, just enough to feel like a warning. You make no jokes. You tell no stories. Sometimes, silence is a louder scream than laughter could ever be. By midday, your absence from the usual places becomes its own performance. The courtyard feels colder without your voice cutting through the frost. The stables are quieter. No riddles tossed to the stable boys. No whispered rhymes to the kitchen maids. They notice, you made yourself loud yesterday so you could be quiet today. Now your silence is strategy, not retreat. You walk the upper halls, where the nobles avoid and the wind creeps through cracks in the stone. You pass portraits of kings who died pretending their crowns were still heavy. You wonder how many fools stood beneath them, waiting to speak what no one else dared. You nod to each one like fellow actors who never took their masks off in time. The guard by the west stairs flinches when he sees you. Good, let him. You say nothing. Just smile and keep walking. Let them imagine what you know. Let them wonder what you've written, what you've heard. Fear is not always the blade. It is the space between your grin and your next breath. That night, the queen sends no summons, but her chamber door is cracked open as you pass. That is its own invitation. You enter without knocking. She sits by the fire, unpainted, barefoot, hair braided back, like a soldier's widow. You sit across from her and wait. She tosses a letter into the fire without looking at you. It curls, blackens, and disappears. She says your name again slowly, as if saying it grants her a kind of power. You say nothing. She tells you that the king's mind is unraveling, slowly, quietly. Too many battles, too many shadows, too much wine and not enough truth. She says he is starting to forget what happened and who made it happen. She says he called her by the wrong name last night. You ask her what name. She says it was yours. You let that sit between you. She stands, walks past, opens the door, and says just one sentence. If I disappear, make sure they remember me as dangerous. Then she is gone. And the fire keeps burning, but the room feels cold. You stare into the flames a while longer. Then you take the bells off your coat, fold them into cloth, place them in the hearth. You do not burn them. Not yet. The bells stay hidden. You walk without them now. Lighter, quieter. Not because you are afraid, but because you know the weight of attention. There is nothing louder than the absence of something familiar. When people hear you coming, they smile. When they do not hear you, they wonder. That wondering is your new rhythm. You pass the kitchens and no one meets your eyes. You pass the chapel and hear no prayers. The walls are holding their breath again. This castle has entered the hour before a storm, and everyone can feel it, but only you know which way the wind is truly blowing. In the afternoon, you return to the old archive room. Dust, silence, forgotten names. You dig through the scrolls, not for records, for patterns. You find copies of letters sent under false names. You match the handwriting to a steward who retired too young, to a noble who vanished during a feast, to a queen whose portrait was taken down a week after her final breath. You begin writing them down. A list, not of enemies, of stories, of endings. That evening, a messenger boy stops you outside the barracks, hands you a page sealed with wax in the shape of a crow's foot. You break it. It is a single line, scrawled in rushed ink. He has begun asking if you were ever real. You crumple it in your fist and let it fall into the trough beside the horses. You do not need to keep it. That truth is already in your spine. If the king no longer knows your name, it is not because he never knew it. It is because you have become the part of him he is trying to forget. That night you perform, not by request, by design. You stand in the hall unannounced and begin a tale about a tower that forgot who it was built to protect. A tower that looked out across the land and called every face a stranger. A tower that one day crumbled not because it was struck, but because the stones simply decided it was done, holding the weight of lies. The queen does not laugh. She does not smile. But she watches until the last word leaves your mouth. Then she stands and leaves the hall. Alone, the king calls for you the next morning. Not through a page, through his own voice echoing down the hall like a bell that has not rung in years. You step into the throne room slow, deliberate, wearing black instead of motley. That alone draws whispers. The king looks older than yesterday, or maybe just more honest. His crown sits crooked. His eyes do not meet yours at first. He gestures for the others to leave. They do. Even the guards. That is how you know something is coming. Something only for you. He speaks softly, like he is telling a secret to someone who has already heard it. He asks if you remember the night of the fire. You do. He asks if you remember who started it. You say no. That is the truth. And the lie. Because no fire ever starts with a spark. It starts with air. And you were the air that night, fanning something no one else saw burning. He stands, walks down the steps of his dais, closer than he has been in years. You smell the old wine in his breath, the faint scent of pine oil from a room no one enters but him. He says he remembers when you were young. Too clever, too fast. He says the court needed a mirror, and instead it got a knife dressed as laughter. He says he is tired. He says he wants one final joke. And then he says, make it count. You do not nod. You do not bow. You just speak. You tell him a story about a king who built a wall so high he could no longer hear the truth, echoing inside his own chambers. A king who forgot the names of the ones who fed him and feared the ones who smiled without blinking. A king who looked into a mirror one day and saw a fool grinning back. He does not laugh. He closes his eyes and whispers, yes, that is the one. You leave the hall before anyone else enters. By the time the court returns, the king is still sitting there, smiling, but not moving. They do not announce his death. Not at first. The court keeps moving, slower, quieter, as if no one wants to be the one to say what everyone feels. The queen does not weep. She sits beside the empty throne like it was always hers, and in many ways it was. You watch from the gallery, where no one dares ask what happened, because everyone already knows. He was old, they say, tired, the wine maybe, the cold, the silence. You are never named, not in the whispers, not in the records, but you see it in the way the steward no longer meets your gaze. In the way the guards stiffen when you enter a room. You have become the last truth he heard. that makes you dangerous and necessary. The queen calls for a feast, not mourning, celebration. She says the realm deserves joy. She says the king would have wanted laughter in his absence. No one questions her. You are told to prepare something special, a new performance, one for memory, one for legacy. You are handed the old lute, the one with the cracked neck and the missing string. You take it, not because it will hold the song, but because it will look right in your hands. That night, you do not perform. You walk to the center of the hall, lute under one arm, bells silent, coat black. You speak once, just once. You tell them that the king ruled in his time, and now time rules in his place, and that the fool who outlives the crown is never truly free. Then you bow and leave the hall. You sit in the chapel later, alone, the cold pressing through the stone into your spine. You light a candle, not for the king, for the silence he left behind, a silence you now carry like a crown made of smoke. The queen joins you hours later, says nothing, just lights a second flame. You do not speak. Neither does she. There is nothing left to say. Only the echo of laughter in a room that will never hear it again the same way. The next morning, the bells on your old cap are polished. Not by you. Someone left them on your stool, clean and gleaming, resting on folded cloth like an offering. You do not wear them, but you run your thumb across the brass, feeling each one's memory, the weight of every joke that landed too clean, every laugh that hid a warning, every story that spared someone for just one more day. You tie them in a pouch and hang it from your belt, not as armor, as reminder. You do not get to forget what you were made into. The queen holds court from the high seat now. Her voice has changed. It carries better. There is no pretense of softness anymore. Her commands come like finished thoughts, and no one dares interrupt them. You watch from the gallery. You are not required to be there, but you come, because watching power shift is how you stay ahead of it. She makes decisions quickly, cuts off 2 trade agreements, raises a new tax, sends a letter sealed with her own blood to the southern marshes. The court listens like it is hearing prophecy. No one says her name louder than necessary. In the evening, she sends for you. You find her in the tower room where the wind screams through the shutters even when the sky is still. She stands by the fire, sleeves rolled, hands bare. She looks tired, but only in the way a blade is tired after cutting through something thick. She asks you if you are still her fool. You answer, no. She nods. Then she asks if you are still her shadow. You do not speak. That is enough. She hands you a sealed parchment and says it must be delivered, not by courier, by you, in person, to someone who does not appear in any records. You recognize the name, one of the scribes who vanished years ago. You thought he was dead. She smiles when she sees the flicker in your eyes. That is her answer. She says, go at dawn. No escort. You nod once. Before you leave, she asks one more question. If the throne forgets my name, will you remember? You meet her gaze and say yes, but only if I forget mine. You leave before dawn. The sky is still iron-colored, and the mist hangs low, curling around the castle, like it wants to remember everything it touches. You wear no colors, no bells, no disguise, just a black coat, a blade no longer hidden, and the sealed letter tucked behind your ribs like a second heart. The guards open the gate without a word. They do not salute. They do not nod. They just watch. It is the same way people look at statues of saints, too afraid to pray to them, too afraid not to. The road curves south through the trees, old oaks that creak even when the wind holds still. You walk without a horse. The queen said you would be faster this way. She was not wrong. You know how to move like a rumor, soft-footed, low-eyed, gone before anyone can ask the right questions. You pass a caravan with painted wagons. They do not speak to you. One of the children stares. You smile once. It is enough to unsettle everyone. By nightfall you reach the edge of the marsh. The air thickens, sweet and rot tangled together. The village is barely there, just scattered huts and a longhouse buried in reeds. You ask no questions. Just find the one with smoke still rising. Inside, a man sits with ink-stained fingers and a voice like dry leaves. You hand him the letter. He does not read it, just smells the wax, nods once, and tosses it into the fire. He says she remembers. He says the work will begin again. He pours you bitter tea without asking your name. He knows it. They all do, out here, even if they pretend not to. That night, you sleep by the hearth with your boots still on. A dog curls beside you without asking. The fire burns low, slow, steady. When you close your eyes, you dream of a throne made of pages, and a woman sitting on it whispering your name like it is a secret spell carved into old stone. And you wake knowing you are not the fool anymore. You are the story that survived the crown. When you return to the castle, the gates open slower, not from rust, from suspicion. You step through like fog, silent, unannounced, seen only when you choose to be. The guard captain nods but does not meet your eye. You are no longer the jester in his mind. You are something else now, something quiet that outlived a king. That makes people nervous. You walk through the halls and feel the shift in the way doors open, the way voices drop when you pass. You are not wearing bells, but the silence around you rings louder than they ever did. You reach your chamber and find the latch undone. Inside, nothing stolen, but everything has been touched. Your stool moved, your blanket folded wrong, someone looking for a truth they could not find. You leave it, you do not lock the door again. You want them to come back. You want them to think you are unbothered. That is how you bait people who trade in whispers. They expect fear. You give them stillness. Later, the queen sends word. Not through a page, through the cook. That is how you know the message is real. She says 3 words, it has begun. You nod once. Thank the cook. Take a piece of bread you do not eat. You walk to the highest tower where the air feels thinner, the view wider. You stare out across the valley and see the banners being raised on the eastern road, the old sigil, the one that was burned from memory after the last rebellion. You are not surprised. You are not afraid. You are ready. That night, you sit by the fire and write a name on a strip of cloth. One name, nothing else. You wrap it around your wrist, knot it twice, and press your palm to your chest. This is not costume anymore. This is oath. You wake before the bells ring, before the cooks light their fires, before the castle remembers it is supposed to breathe. You dress without thinking, each motion practiced into muscle, black wool, dagger at the hip, ring hidden inside your glove, the one only the queen knows you wear. You step into the corridor and walk past your own shadow. It does not follow. That is how you know today matters. The eastern banners are closer now. The riders have been seen. They do not announce war, but they bring the scent of it, and scent is always the first sign. You find her in the war room. No crown, no throne, just a map stretched across the table and 2 candles burning down to the bone. She does not look up when you enter. You do not speak. She draws a line across the parchment, pauses, then speaks without turning. There are 3 names you will need. She says them softly. You know all 3. Of course you do. One laughed too hard at your jokes. One never did. One is the reason you started keeping secrets in the first place. She asks if you can still be funny. You smile. Slow. Only if they deserve it. She finally meets your eyes. Then make them earn it. By midday, the castle is moving like a wound that has just remembered it can bleed. Guards reshuffled. Doors locked that were once left open. Servants told to speak less. You pass through it all like smoke. You speak to no one, but they feel you. You sit beside the scribe who owes you a favor and ask what the Eastern Lord fears most. He tells you, A story about his son, about a hunt, about a choice not made. That is enough. You write it down, just the shape of it. Because a joke is only funny when it is true. Because when it is not funny anymore, it becomes justice. The first rider from the east arrives at sundown, not a diplomat, not a noble, just a messenger with too much sweat on his brow and a letter sealed too tight. The queen reads it alone. You stand outside her chamber watching the candlelight shift behind the curtains. When she emerges, she hands you the page. You do not need to open it. She already has. She just wants you to feel the weight. It is heavier than it should be, because it is not really paper. It is a promise of war, disguised as courtesy. The Eastern House wants peace, but only if the crown forgets what the fool remembers. That means you. She does not order you to leave. She does not order you to stay. She says, be clever. So you go to the stables. You pick the slowest horse, the one they least expect. You ride out at dusk, not toward the east, but toward the cliff trail, where old messengers used to hide when truths were too dangerous to speak. You light no torch. You ride under the stars and let the moon show you where the world still hurts. At the edge of the cliffs you find the one you came for, the old archivist, the one who left the court years ago with too many secrets packed in ink-stained sleeves. He still lives, still keeps the truth in scrolls buried under stone. He sees you. He knows why you are here. He does not ask. He hands you a single book wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, records of deals, letters, debts unpaid by the Eastern bloodline. Proof. You take it. Not for blackmail. For clarity. Because power without memory is just noise. You return by first light. You place the book on her table. Say nothing. She opens it slowly and begins to write. She writes for hours, quill scratching like a blade against parchment. You sit across the room, silent, still, present only by design. She writes, not with anger, not with fear, with precision. She is not drafting a reply. She is writing history before someone else can, and she is writing it in a voice that sounds suspiciously like yours. You recognize the rhythm, the turns of phrase. She has been listening longer than you realized. At one point, she pauses, looks at you, and asks what the Eastern lords fear more, shame or laughter. You do not answer. She already knows. But she wanted to hear the silence. When she finishes, she melts wax and seals the letter with her ring. No crest. Just the clean mark of flame against paper. She says you will deliver it, but not to the court, not to the riders, to the one whose name never made it into the songs, the bastard son, the one who remembers too much, the one who still believes crowns should be earned. You leave at dusk again, always at dusk now. That is the hour where truth walks unnoticed. The bastard lives in a tower with no banners. He answers the door himself, sees you and laughs once, dry and hollow. He knew you would come. You hand him the letter. He does not open it. He just holds it to his chest for a long breath and says, "So she remembers." You nod. He pours 2 cups of bitter wine and speaks no further. The next day, the Eastern banners vanish from the hills. They do not march. They do not threaten. They retreat, not out of mercy, out of fear. Because they know now, the crown still laughs, and the fool still remembers. The retreat is not announced. No horns, no letters, just one morning where the fog lifts and the hills are bare again. The queen stands at the eastern window, her hands resting on the sill like she is holding the land itself steady. You stand behind her, just close enough to feel the same air, just far enough to be forgotten by the chroniclers. She does not speak. She just watches, not with relief, but with calculation, as if even the absence of danger must be accounted for, as if peace is just another mask she will wear until it cracks. You ask nothing. She says nothing. But in the space between your silence, You both know this was not a victory. It was a postponement. You do not defeat memory. You just hold it until someone stronger is ready to carry it next. You leave the room first. Let her be the one who remains. She deserves the weight of her own stillness. You return to your chamber, where the bells remain folded on the stool. You pick them up. For the first time in weeks, you tie one to your wrist, not to perform, to remember. You jingle it once, a soft sound. No one hears it but you. That is enough. In the courtyard, children play without fear. They mimic the court. One plays a queen, one a knight. One puts a bucket on his head and calls himself the fool. You watch from the archway, arms crossed. The boy stumbles, rings the bell too loud, and makes the others laugh. He bows, dramatic and clumsy. They cheer. He looks proud. You smile faint and walk away. In the chapel, the light falls across the stone like a memory trying to return. You sit on the same bench where you once burned a name. You carve a new one under the seat. Not your own, hers, small, hidden, where only the dust will remember it. That is how you honor her. That night, the queen summons the court, not for news, not for war, for a story. She says the realm has forgotten its laughter, and she wants to hear the sound again. They turn to you. Of course they do. You stand in the center of the great hall, motley half-worn, one bell swinging slow on your wrist, and you begin. You tell them about a fool who wore silence like a crown, about a queen who ruled without needing to be loved, about a king who laughed too late, about a realm that never knew the story was real until the final page was already written. They laugh, not all of them, but enough. And you bow, not for applause, for closure. The next day, no one speaks of the story you told. Not directly, but they feel it. The nobles pass you in the hall and hesitate before asking for anything. The guards glance twice when you walk too quietly. Even the scribes whisper your name now. Not with mockery, but with distance. That is how you know the tale landed, not in their laughter, in their caution. You taught them something they were not ready to learn. And like all good truths, it sat behind their teeth long after the smile faded. You spend the morning in the stables, brushing the queen's mare with slow, steady strokes. The animal likes you, does not flinch when you move. There is something calming in working with something that has never lied. She eats from your hand and forgets the weight of bloodlines. You envy that. You wonder what it would be like to live without the memory of what silence can do to a man. Or a crown. By midday, the steward delivers you a sealed pouch. No emblem, just weight. Inside coin, old coin, and a letter written in a hand you once helped teach to hold a quill. It is from the prince, now king in waiting. He says nothing of thrones or succession, just 5 words: I remember who you were. You burn the letter after reading it. Not from fear, from duty. He should remember, but no one else should have to. That evening, you walk through the lower village. No guards, no disguise. People still recognize you, but fewer now call you Jester. They call you by a different word. One you never asked for. One that makes you uneasy. Whisperer, keeper, the fool who stayed. You hate the poetry of it, but you understand its purpose. People always name what they do not want to forget. You visit the old healer at the edge of the field. She smiles, blind as ever, but knows your step. She pours tea that tastes like stone and ash. You drink it anyway. She tells you what she saw in her dreams. A tower falling, a crown cracking, a laugh that echoed after the fire. You ask if the laugh was yours. She says no. It belonged to the world, and it was not kind. You walk home in the dark. No torch, no fear. Just memory on your back and the soft rhythm of a bell that no longer needs to be heard. You do not dream often anymore. When you do, it is never of the stage or the throne or the laughter. It is always of the quiet moments between. A hand brushing past yours in a hallway, a whisper too soft to catch. a candle blown out before the truth could rise. You wake in the middle of the night and sit at the edge of your bed, eyes on the stone floor, heart beating like a slow drum. This is the part they never write in songs, the part where the one who spoke truth has to live with it. You take out the pouch, the one with the bells. You lay them on the table, one by one, 8 in total, each from a different year, each tied to a moment someone remembered too late. You do not polish them. You do not wear them. You just lay them there and listen. There is no sound, just the memory of what they used to mean, the things they gave you, the things they cost. At sunrise, the queen sends for you. No ceremony, no summons, just a knock and a nod. You walk through the castle with your head uncovered. No cap, no mask, no roll. The servants step aside without being told. You pass the new guards, too young, too serious. They think you are a myth made flesh. They are not wrong. You meet her in the garden. She is kneeling in the frost, gloveless, planting the first seeds of winter grain. You say nothing. She offers no explanation. She looks up once and says, "I need something that will grow after I am gone." You crouch beside her, reach into the soil, dig with bare hands. The cold bites, but you do not pull away. Together you plant. No guards, no court, no audience. Only the earth and the weight of what must continue. Later she walks with you to the chapel, says the tomb is finished, the king's name is carved deep, as if that makes him permanent. She asks if you would like your name on the wall too when it is your time. You smile, say nothing. Then carve a single word into the chapel door before you leave. Listen, days pass like breath, now, quiet, repetitive, unnamed, but not empty. You walk the walls at dawn, not for defense, but for rhythm. You sit with the cooks and listen to the rhythm of knives on wood. You nod to the old man who cleans the torches and never asks why they keep burning even when no one walks the halls. You speak less, laugh less, and yet people hear you more clearly now than they ever did when your voice was wrapped in wit. That is the irony of the role. You were loud when no one listened. Now you whisper, and they remember every word. One morning, a girl approaches you in the corridor, barefoot, wild-eyed, too young to be carrying the kind of silence she is holding. She says her brother is gone, taken, not by war, not by plague, by someone important, someone above punishment. She says she was told to forget. She asks you if forgetting is what keeps people safe. You crouch and look her in the eye. You tell her the truth. You say forgetting keeps kings on their thrones. But remembering, that keeps the flame under their feet. You give her a scrap of paper. Tell her to write what she knows and leave it under the chapel stone. You will find it. You always do. Later in the queen's chamber you mention the girl. You do not name names. You never do. But she understands. She always has. She nods once, and the next day a noble leaves court quietly. No accusations, no trial, just absence. That is how real justice works here. It is not loud, it is not public. It is silent, surgical. The kind that only fools and queens are trusted to carry. You return to the garden that evening. The grain has begun to sprout, green, thin, alive. You kneel, press 2 fingers into the soil, and whisper, still growing. The queen speaks less now. Her voice is rare, and so when it comes, people listen like it might be her last. You understand this. You've lived in the echo of words too long not to respect what happens when they fall quiet. You see her walking the outer wall at dusk, alone, wrapped in a cloak too thin for the wind. She does not notice the cold. Or maybe she does and refuses to name it. You walk beside her once, not speaking, just a presence. She lets it happen. That is all the permission you need. She tells you the kingdom feels smaller lately. You say, "It always was." She smiles. the kind that fades as it forms. The days slow, the court softens. New voices rise but speak cautiously. They remember too much now. That is your doing, not through speeches, through presence. You became a question no one can quite answer, and that is why they keep turning their heads when you pass. You are not a ghost. You are something more unsettling. Someone who is still here. The prince, not yet crowned, begins to ask for counsel. Not in public, in gardens, in kitchens, places where truth breathes easier. He asks what the people need. You tell him they need to feel seen. He asks what the court fears. You tell him, being laughed at by someone who is not afraid to die. He asks why you never left. You tell him because no one else would stay and remember correctly. He does not ask again. One night, you sit at the edge of the tower and watch the last of the old banners come down, not torn, folded, stored, history preserved, not erased. That is progress. The chapel bell rings once. No call to prayer, just a single note to mark the end of a long silence. You walk there slowly, push open the door, and see your name etched in the stone by the wall. Not with title, not with dates, just 5 words beneath it. He told the truth, laughing. You touch the stone once, just with your fingertips, not to confirm it's real. You already know that. You touch it to remember the weight of being seen, truly seen, not as a servant, not as an ornament, as the one who stood between power and truth and let both pass through you without flinching. The air in the chapel is cold, but not cruel. This place was once silent, because no one wanted to hear what lived in the walls. Now it is silent because the truth has already been spoken, and it does not need to be said again. You sit in the pew farthest from the altar, your back straight, hands resting palm down on the wood, the same way you used to sit backstage before the laughter, before the lights, before the performance that became your name. The bell does not ring again. It doesn't have to. The moment has already landed and stayed. Later, you walk through the halls one last time, as if you own them, not by claim, but by echo. Every corridor remembers the sound of your steps. Every stone holds a story you sharpened into survival. The servants nod when they see you, not out of duty, but recognition. The guards part without command. Even the new nobles do not stop their conversations. They just lower their voices. That is what influence becomes. Eventually, not volume, presence. The queen sits in the solar now, most days, wrapped in fur, hands on her lap, eyes always turned to the horizon. She does not need to rule. She has already lasted. She sees you approach and gestures to the second chair. You sit without speaking. She asks if you believe they will keep the peace. You say, only if the stories stay sharp. She smiles. This time it lingers. She tells you there will be no statue, no songs, no feast. You nod. That was never the goal. But there will be one day, she says, when a child repeats one of your stories too young to know where it came from. And it will save someone. That, she says, is your reward. The next morning, you return to the garden. The grain has grown taller, greener, stronger. A wind moves through it like a breath. Finally let go. You crouch beside it, place your hand just above the stalks, and feel the hum of a world that went on without needing permission. The garden is quiet but not still. Birds flit between branches. Bees wander without urgency. This is the kind of peace no trumpet announces. This is what the end of a storm looks like when no one is watching. You dig a shallow hole near the oak tree and place something inside. A single bell, wrapped in the corner of your old motley. Not buried, planted. If someone finds it one day, let them wonder who left it. Let them feel the echo in their palm. Let them hear what it meant without anyone having to explain it. You spend the rest of the day walking the village paths. No guards, no disguise, just presence. An old woman stops you and offers dried fruit. You take it, thank her. She says she remembers the time you made the tax collector cry. You smile. You do not correct her. It wasn't a joke. It was a truth said too loudly in the wrong room. But her memory is gentler than yours. And that's fine. Let the people remember you kindly. The court already remembers you accurately. At dusk, the prince, no longer a boy, not yet a king, asks if you will stay when he takes the throne. You shake your head. He nods like he expected that. Then asks, "What will you do?" You say, "I will go where the stories stop." He asks where that is. You say, "Far enough that when someone lies they still think I might be listening." He does not laugh. He does not try to. You leave the castle as night falls. No procession, no farewell. Just one man walking alone, the sound of his steps too soft to echo, and too familiar to forget. You follow no road. Roads are for people with destinations, with orders, with maps. You walk the tree lines where the paths are chosen in the moment, where no one expects to find a figure dressed in silence, carrying memory like a blade hidden beneath his ribs. The sky stretches gray above you. Birds call, but none fly close. They sense something older in your step. Not threat, just knowing. The kind of knowing that shifts the air. By the third day, you reach a hamlet too small to name. A mill turns slow in the wind. Children chase chickens between huts. A dog barks once, then falls silent when you meet its eyes. The villagers watch you, unsure. You smile gently and ask for bread. They give it freely, not because they know who you are, but because you do not ask like a man who would ever lie. You sit beneath the eaves of the mill and listen. You always listen first. You learn about the merchant who steals from the waits, the boy who carves too well for his age, the woman who lost 2 sons and still sings by the river. No one tells you these things. They just say them near you, like you are not a stranger, like they trust something they cannot name. That night, you share a fire with a tanner who drinks too much and speaks like a man waiting for an apology that will never come. You tell him a story, not a joke, a tale, about a kingdom where fools kept the crown honest, and where silence once ended a war. He asks if it is true. You shrug. He says, "It sounds too sharp to be a lie." You sleep outside. No roof, just stars. You do not dream. But when you wake, the air feels lighter. The world has begun to carry its own weight again. And you walk on. You arrive at the coast, after weeks of drifting, not wandering drifting, like something being carried back to where it started, not to rest, but to dissolve into something bigger. The sea is cold and wide and entirely disinterested in your story. You like that. You sit on the cliffs above it and speak to the wind like it is the only thing left that cannot lie. You tell it names you never spoke aloud. You give it the weight of choices you never confessed. The wind does not answer, but it listens. Below, a fishing village bustles with quiet purpose. Nets hung, boats patched, salt thick in the air. You stay on the edge. You are not made for towns anymore, but they offer you fish anyway. A boy with red hair hands it over like it is a secret. He says nothing, just waits. You nod. He runs off grinning like he gave a gift to a myth. Maybe he did. That night, you carve a line into driftwood, a line you have carried for years but never said aloud. When they stop laughing, you will know they are afraid. You place it in the sand and let the tide pull it away. That truth belongs to someone else. Now, you've carried it long enough. At sunrise, an old man sits beside you without asking. He says he once saw you in a king's court. You ask if he remembers what you said. He shakes his head. Only remembers how quiet the room got when you finished. That, you say, is enough. He offers you a flask. You take a sip. It burns, not like fire, like memory. Later, you walk barefoot through the tide. The sea curls around your ankles and pulls back like it might take a part of you with it. You let it. There is nothing left to protect. only truth to leave behind, in the quiet places where it can grow. You return to the hills one last time, not to visit, to fade. No letters sent ahead, no name spoken aloud. The trees do not greet you, they just part. The same way people used to when you wore bells and smiles like armor. But you are not wearing any of that now. Only a cloak worn thin by weather and time. The weight on your shoulders is not heavy anymore. It is just yours. Familiar, like a name whispered through a closed door. You find the old orchard still standing, bent with age, overgrown, but alive. You remember performing here once for no one, just wind, and birds, and yourself. You take a seat beneath the crooked apple tree and exhale like you have finally been allowed to. This is not exile, this is release. The air smells like stone and moss, and something you never learned to name. You take out the last piece of parchment you kept. Not a confession, not a memory, just a phrase. If you speak, speak clean. If you stay, stay quiet. If you leave, leave whole. You fold it once, place it inside a hollow in the bark, not to be found, just to be part of the tree now. In the distance, you hear laughter. Children, maybe. Someone telling a story you once told, now twisted, brighter, safer. That is how stories survive. They shed their teeth so the next mouth can carry them without bleeding. You lie back. You watch the clouds drift. You count 3. You stop at 3. Not because you forgot what comes next, but because you no longer need to name it. The orchard goes quiet as the sun drops behind the hill. Not sudden, not dramatic. Just the kind of stillness that only comes after something long has finally let go. You lie there, the grass warm beneath you, your coat folded beneath your head, the last bell tucked between your fingers. You do not ring it. Not because you cannot, but because there is nothing left that needs to be said aloud. The story has already echoed. It has already rooted. You remember the court, the queen, the firelight on stone, the nights you sharpened truth, until it cut through silence. You remember the boy who tried to imitate your bow, the girl who wrote her brother's name in a prayer. You remember the stories you left behind, and the ones they made up after you were gone. And you are not angry about it. That is how memory works. It bends. It flowers. It forgets just enough to become bearable. You close your eyes, not to sleep, to feel the weight of what never needed an audience. The truth you carried, the ones you protected, the names you never spoke, because some things were never meant for the crowd. In the village below, a candle is lit. A story is told. Someone laughs. Not hard, just enough. And that is how you survive. Not in books, not in stone, not in glory, but in the space between someone's breath and the first sound they make when they feel safe enough to speak again. You were never just a jester. You were the silence that came before the truth, and the smile that followed it, once it had done its work. So rest now. You told it well.